Are you ready? Okay, good evening, everyone. We're happy to see the people out there in the audience tonight. Makes us think we're not all by ourselves. So I think we need to start with roll call. Robin, please.
All right, Commissioner Hensick,
Present.
Chair Stevens,
Present.
Vice Chair Scott,
Present.
Commissioner Hammond,
Present.
Commissioner Roughton is not here. Secretary Bockert,
Present.
Commissioner Rubis,
Present.
Alternate Quarternick,
Present.
Commission Liaison Broyles, and Council Liaison Nyan,
Here.
and Council Member Liaison Rambo.
Here.
All right, we have quorum.
Thank you very much.
Oh, and I am sorry. I should also say Nolan Myers,
Yes.
liaison from the Student Route 66 Task Force.
Thank you.
Present.
Well, first this evening, I want to say a great big thank you to everyone who helped us on Saturday at Celebrate Wildwood. Our tent was very busy. We had a lot of things to share with people and a lot of people to share them with. So everyone who was there helping out throughout the day, we really do appreciate your efforts. Thanks though to Robin and other city staff for the setup before we all got started. That was a lot of things to bring out. And then in the end, a lot of things to bring back in, but they were all really appreciated during the day. We really enjoy sharing our local history and information with the people who came up to the tent. And some of them had some really, really good questions. And so it really made us feel good to be able to answer a lot of those questions. So I think now we'll delve into business at hand for this evening with the approval of the minutes of the last meeting. Are there any questions or corrections to the minutes that you received? Hearing none, I will say they are approved by general consent. Is there any public comment this evening? Do we have anyone online waiting for us?
You'll just give me a moment. For those who are participating on our Zoom call, we are in public comment. If you would like to speak at this time, please use the raise hand feature and I will promote you. Thank you. I do not see a raised hand.
Thank you very much. Well, our first item of business is old business. And the first item for act is the Route 66 roadside park project discussion. Underneath that is the proposed mural. And we do need to have a vote on that tonight to postpone it for a little bit more investigation. So I will entertain a motion for that, please.
I'll make that. Second.
It's been moved and seconded that we postpone the information on the mural. Any other discussion on that? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone
Aye.
opposed? We will postpone that for tonight.
Thank you.
Next item is the proposed directional sign.
All right, Madam Chair, if I
Yes.
may, I will present on that item. Actually, several members of our commission, as part of the Route 66 roadside park project, have suggested that we potentially, actually, why don't I begin with just an overview of where we've been?
Okay.
So to give you a little bit of background, at our last meeting of the commission, we had a pinup for our Route 66 roadside park project. At that time, SWT Design, the park landscape and architectural firm, presented two conceptual layouts as preferred for the project. And this commission chose to go forward with the Wildwood Route 66 timeline walk. And we conditioned that motion with providing further design input into that conceptual layout. Also concurrent with this discussion, we have launched the student design competition for the park. And Rockwood School District students, as well as other students in the area, are currently being challenged to design the park's photo op feature. So we're very excited that that is underway, and we will be talking about that further along in this discussion. However, moving into our first sub item, at our last meeting and at several meetings before, members of this commission have proposed that we include a directional sign into the park design concept. I believe Ms. Quarternick is one of those. And also Mr. Roughton shared some pictures at the last meeting. And the idea behind this signage is to potentially include Wildwood historic communities and the distances to them from the Route 66 roadside park, as well as potentially the ends of Route 66, Chicago and Santa Monica, and also potentially some Wildwood points of interest. So at this time, I will end my presentation. And if you have any questions, please do ask Director Vunich or I about it. But we will go ahead and request discussion and a position on this sub item. Thank you.
Are there any people wanting to make any comments on this? We had a very good presentation by Mr. Roughton last meeting with some samples from other places.
Are we looking for a motion to proceed?
I would be looking for a motion to move in that direction and present that to SWT Design as something that this commission would like to see.
I will make that.
Is there a second?
I will second.
It's been moved and seconded that we proceed with giving the information to the design architects.
Madam Chair, may I interrupt, please? Sorry. Nolan Myers, as our liaison from the Student Route 66 Task Force, I just want you to be aware that while you can participate in the discussion, unfortunately, just like Ms. Broyles here and as our council members, you are unable to make motions or vote, but you can be part of the discussion. Thank you.
Okay. Any more discussion on that? All those in favor say aye.
Do we still need a second then?
I thought I heard a second.
Oh,
Alan. Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? It has passed. Thank you. I think that's going to be fun. Robin, you have additional things for us now?
yes, I do. If you'll wait just one moment, I'll bring up my share screen. All right, I appreciate your patience. And I am just going to go into full screen mode. Okay, before I ask discussion for any of these sub items, my thought is I will go through my presentation of each of the sub items I laid out in your reports tonight as topics of discussion for the park project. And then I'll circle back and we can attack each one by one. How's that?
Very good.
Okay. So there are many topics of discussion in relation to the park project on the agenda tonight. And these are items that we have heard posed as ideas throughout several park meetings, but we haven't necessarily come to an overall position on each of these items as a commission. So the objective tonight is to kind of narrow down on what we want to direct SWT Design to do as they proceed into our next rendition of the pinup. One of those items is park signage. And this is different than the directional milepost that we just voted on. This is actually an idea that was presented by one of our Route 66 Association of Missouri members, Robert Gell, as part of the visioning workshop for this project. At the time, everybody had very good things to say about this design, but now we are at the point where we need to direct SWT if this is somewhere we would like to move forward and incorporate into the design. Thank you. I apologize. I said I was going to go through each of these items. Moving into the comfort station for the park project. So far, we have been torn between two themes for this comfort station. One was a fruit stand theme, and one was a Route 66 gas station or service station theme. So before you today, I have the photograph of the fruit stand presented by SWT Design. And I also have the service station photograph presented to you by Vice Chair Scott today. I also took the liberty of doing a quick search in our Wildwood history book to get a sense of the character of Grover during that time, given some of the comment and discussion we've been hearing. And what I found through various quotes, I did find more information on Mr. Nyer's farm in the Grover area. So there certainly were farms in historic Grover, and it had an agricultural feel to it. However, I also found quite a bit of information about the two service stations in the area, the various gas stations, et cetera, from another resident and their memories of Grover in the 40s and 50s. One service station that has been thoroughly documented is the Roloffic service station, which was mentioned both in the history book and in a Wildwood Historical Society presentation done by Ms. Karen Fox. So here is a picture of the Roloffic service station in Grover. And it is no longer standing, but this used to be at the southeast corner of Woods and Manchester Road. The other aspect that we thought we would discuss in terms of this comfort station is whether or not we might incorporate some of the Ozark stone from one of our authorized demolitions by this commission, that house on Lindy Lane, into what is a historically Route 66 feature, this giraffe-looking Ozark stone concept that I have seen personally in my travels along the route with many different buildings. Next, and I don't know that we need to make a decision on this one today, but we did go into discussion on what we should use in that purple area of the park, which SWT Design has left pretty open to interpretation, whether it be more interpretive displays, a playground. We've basically voted against a splash pad, if I'm taking your discussion correctly. But there are many flexible uses that could be utilized here in the purple area of the space. Next, and this came up today, so this wasn't outlined in your report this evening. But Mr. Scott had suggested that even the timeline walk, the path through the park, should be considered. And his idea was to take the graphic done by our designer, Stacy Minkoff from Minkoff Studios, on the points of interest map, and somehow incorporate that same graphic into that pathway in the park design. And here I just went ahead and put the two concepts side by side so you could see how it's currently laid out and what is proposed by Mr. Scott. And then finally, I just wanted to leave it open for discussion in case there's something that I haven't summarized correctly, or if there's something else that should be discussed this evening. But that is the end of my suggested topics of conversation. Thank you.
So Robin, on the gas station concept, is that like true to form? Like, is that a full bay garage, and what's the size of that structure? It looks like it's rather large for a smaller park, you know?
Oh, when you're talking about the comfort station?
Yes.
The comfort, to my knowledge, it would be a smaller replica of whatever we're trying to mimic.
Okay,
Because we're just talking about a couple restrooms and, you know, possibly a display area with some brochures.
so it's more of a facade of the front
Yeah.
of. what
That's
the building-
correct.
I think, it's the image. It's not the size. We're not doing. Duplicating it,
Right.
but we're using those details, like in the corners, there's those little caps in each corner, and
Mhm.
the coping atop the roof. It's just those details, and maybe some other details we can find from buildings around here that were built in that era. And
Yeah, and with the history of the service station area, I think that leads more towards the history rather than a fruit stand.
well,
Yeah,
yeah, and I think we did get an objection from somebody that didn't want us to promote the usage of gas, but I think because it's
right,
a fossil fuel,
sure,
but it's our history.
Right.
We've got to live with
Yeah.
it. It's was there.
right,
And it was why 66 came this way.
right.
So I think we
exactly.
have to acknowledge it. And I do think, the more I think about it, that this gas station type of image with this overhang, they usually, all the old ones had that little
Mhm.
cupola, or not a cupola, but porch in the front.
Right, right,
Yeah.
because people
And-
would gather there. yeah.
So I think it's, but we tried to just copy some of those images and draw it off of several of the buildings we've seen around here and the buildings that aren't here anymore. So that's my,
Yeah,
I don't want to copy that station across the road there, but
no, yeah.
just to use some of those details
Mhm.
from that.
Robin?
Just so that we're giving that person's objection the appropriate weight, just note that the person who most supports the farm concept and the fruit stand concept are the residents that live directly across the street and have that little farmlet as part of their residence. So that's part of their position on it. Thank you.
Well, we could offer them a fruit stand for the front yard.
Anything else on the comfort station design?
I wonder if there's a way to do a two-sided facade to where you could actually have one side look like the fruit stand and the other side look like the service station. I mean, if it's just a facade on the front and the main structure is on the inside, that might be something you could propose to them.
You're making it hard.
I know, that's what I do.
Jim?
The Route 66 service station are an integral part. of it. Back then, you couldn't go very far without it. And I know going back to our youth when we traveled, we were always looking for a service. Some for the fuel, some for comfort.
Yeah.
And some for refreshments.
Yeah, I think that's all part of the Route 66.
Still a lot of flat tires.
Boy, and flat tire. You had one of those, but everyone.
And the roads weren't that good that you were traveling on, so you did need those stations. Rob?
Real quickly. Yeah, Route 66. Old Manchester was Route 66 for a finite number of years. And I'd like to suggest that we find a station that's representative of the time when it was actually Route 66. My grandpa's station was there from 1921 until 63. So I know it spanned that distance, but it was not the most picturesque of stations. There was a few hundred yards further down on the same side of the road that was very picturesque, and we have good pictures of that. There's also there was a station that's probably only a few hundred feet from our park site. Joe may remember it because it was torn down 30 years ago. It was a Phillips 66 station. It was a small, narrow, very evocative structure with a really high peaked roof. Joe, do you recall it? And I don't know exactly when that was built, but that one was a really cool structure. And I think we should make a little bit of effort to find a station that was appropriate to the time period instead of just having a station from the 50s when Route 66 had already taken the southern route. So can we do that? Is it possible? Okay.
Everything's possible.
Well,
Steve?
I think we should give the charge to SWT and give them these tools, find these pictures of
Right.
all these stations and say, okay, this is what we've got. What can you make of this that really says 66? And I agree with, we should document this to the time it was
It was,
66.
yes,
And not, I'm thinking, okay, it's not the old hotel that was closed and vacant before then, but it should be that period of time. So
Yes, Robin?
My other comment would be there may be some opportunities, I think, to address some of the concerns about that Mr. Sansone expressed, because we are talking about doing an interpretive walk, like a timeline through Wildwood Route 66. And who's to say we can't have some sort of interpretation about what we're looking at in terms of the future? Because Route 66 really did evolve throughout time. And that is certainly one thing we could study and interpret for anyone who comes through.
Thank you. That's good. Do we need any votes on these tonight, Robin, or just our discussion?
Well, I suppose I think it would be helpful at this point to make a firm stance one way or another, whether we're going to pursue more of a fruit stand concept or whether we're going to pursue more of a Route 66 dated to the time period service station, based on some of what we have had in this community over time and that we have apparently documentation for. And then from there, we can gather that and give it to SWT.
Hey, I'm open for a motion for the gas station concept.
I'll make that.
Chris?
Motion. Oh.
For a gas station concept, keeping in mind to keep it relatively close to a look at it in Wildwood area during that time.
A second?
I'll second.
Steve? Any other discussion? Yes, Joe?
Madam Chair and members of the commission, just be advised, I don't know if having them specifically start looking at designs, architecture for the comfort station was part of their contract. They've put a square on the plan, and I think that's the intent of the master plan or concept design. So I guess I need to talk to them to see if this is something they can do within the expanded already amended contract or if there'll be additional charges. So please proceed with the motion, but just know that I'll be checking just to make sure we can do it under the confines of our funding.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, Grant, I realize their contract is for the concept design of the park. But I do think whenever this final design comes up, I think these are the tools we should give them or the final designer of this.
Mr. Scott, I couldn't concur more. If we have a specific idea about what we like and some options regarding that idea, I think the more information we give them, the better off we'll be in terms of not having them do multiple renderings of things that we really don't want because we didn't give them enough
Right.
information.
Right. Yes, Jim.
Would our graphic designer be a better person to give input to? And have us approve a design?
For this building?
Yes.
Well, may I speak as an architect and say no? It's designed as an architect.
Thank you,
They
Mr.
need an
Scott.
architectural design.
I think Director Vundich is just trying to manage your expectations of what this decision really means tonight and what's going to come up at the next meeting on this subject. Basically, in their next rendition of this conceptual layout, what they might have is a picture of an old Wildwood service station, gas station, but they wouldn't necessarily design it using this
Yeah.
plan. They would just, plant the seed for a theme.
Maybe I'm confused with the term design. Are we talking about line drawings with the utilities and the structure?
That is not at the point where we are. We're at a very
No,
master
I
plan,
understand
big
that. Is
picture.
that what?
Yep.
To me, that's what an architect does.
Well.
Well, also, I mean, let's don't get into the engineer architect.
Right now, we're going forward with a concept or an idea for the park.
Okay.
Is this also where we might talk about the material on the outside? We had discussed a couple of times of possibly using the Ozark stone from that building that was torn down because it is such a Route 66 icon. Is this where we would insert that as well?
Well, I would ask Dr. Rambo if any of our old gas stations in Wildwood had Ozark stone.
Not to my knowledge, they were more like the fake tar paper, fake brick kind of things and whatnot. But there were a couple that were really nice, like ceramic coated brick and so forth. Just really, you couldn't pay for it. You couldn't buy them today. And I'm hoping that we have a facility for soliciting photos from residents, like on our Facebook page or something like that. Say, hey, guys, you got any photos of the old gas stations around here and fruit stands too? And maybe in the next couple of months, we can come up with some, because I know I have some. It's just in my aunt's archives.
Yeah.
And she was just about as organized as I am. So it will take me a while to find them, but I will try to find them. So.
Joe?
I'll defer to Commissioner Coordinator. Did you raise your hand at, Mr. Bacher, Mr. Scott?
Very good.
Steve?
Yeah, I think probably as they call them, the giraffe houses, stone pattern is not, I don't see many gas stations like that, but I do see maybe using that for this wall that goes around the building. I would like to see that pattern somehow expressed in this. I don't think there are too many of these houses like that along here, but it sure says Route 66.
Well, here's the picture on our screen of
Yeah.
the Phillips station having the stone.
Yeah.
Just something to keep in mind as we go forward.
This is the stone that I'm circling with my pointer. That's from the Lindy Lane house.
Yes.
And then this is an example of a Route 66 landmark with the stone. And then, yes, this is a gas station with some stone. I don't know that it necessarily has that classic Ozark stone giraffe look.
Okay. Okay, Joe, you had something else to say.
Just as a reminder, a number of years ago, there was a brick bungalow on Manchester Road across from Larry's Tavern. It was ultimately demolished, but we were able to get most of the glazed brick from it. And we have that in storage.
Very good, thank you. See, we just don't know what all is squirreled away, different places for us to be using. So it's good that you bring it out for us. Thank you.
Are we
Okay.
gonna talk about the other items?
Not
like
yet. We have a motion that we haven't voted
the-
on yet.
for the service station? Okay.
So is there any other discussion on the service station concept? Chris?
So if I understand. If I understand correctly, basically we're saying. We want to lean that direction. We're going to ask SWT Design if they can lean that direction in their next rendering without going full hog on doing architecture diagrams or anything like that. That's not where they're at in the process. I mean, to be blunt, all of this will be a discussion when we get to that stage anyways, right? We're setting some direction for the next phase, but we're going to have discussions at the next phase as well. Is that accurate?
Yes.
Mr. Hammond, I believe that to be correct. Again, we started this process with just hoping to get what I would consider a concept or master plan, which is really just a flat plan that shows the improvements on the site. The character of those improvements is the next step.
Thank you. Okay, we are ready for the vote. All those in favor of the motion, please say yes.
Yes.
Anyone opposed? Thank you. It has passed. So we're moving on now to, we passed, is this the sign?
Our next item of discussion is the sign,
Okay.
With- which again, we can point SWT Design in a certain direction, but ultimately this would be down the road as well.
Right. Okay, any discussion on this proposal?
I think this design of this type of sign or some variation on it is a low sign, is maybe part of the wall around the front, I think would be very good idea. I think it should be deep enough and become a climbing structure for the kids, a place to stand up on and pose for photo ops and things like that. It's not a billboard, but it's a low sign that maybe the 66 part sticks up
Yeah.
5 feet. But be deep enough to sit on, stand on, climb on. It's part of the climbing. It's a climbing structure.
Yes, Jim.
I've always, as soon as I saw that, I bring two things that are important, Wildwood and 60s together. I agree with Steve.
Yes, Elizabeth.
Thank you. I like the sign as well. I was there that day when he handed that out and I just thought, wow. And if it could be, where the 6 and 6 are, where someone could sit or stand behind the 2 6s for photo op would be great. And since we talked about the pink section, I think
Purple?
purple, that could be a low sign, and you want it too high, you're gonna have kids climbing on it. But I think it would be spectacular there on the ground. So kids can get on it and the whole family can take a picture.
Thank you. Anyone else? I would entertain a motion.
I'll move that we-
Steve moves
We
that,
accept this sign as a design direction.
okay.
Second.
Alan has seconded. Any other comments on this before we vote?
Well, being an English major, I think maybe you should take the on out of there because that's a little, here we are. At Wildwood Roadside Park. I mean, I don't know if you're on Wildwood, you're on Route 66, but you're not on Wildwood. You know what I'm saying? So maybe just make sure we got the whole phrase the way we want it,
Okay, thank you. Anyone else? Yes. You are on the park if this is situated in the
Yeah,
park.
yeah.
Take it
You
either
are.
way.
our Wildwood on 66. I bet that gets a little
Right,
complicated.
right.
You could probably even just do away with that top line and just have the
Yes.
Wildwood Roadside Park,
Yes,
you know?
I think that's a good comment.
No, I think this is a concept and you need to design the sign from this, but this is, I think, a great start. This is the idea we
Wildwood,
want.
yeah. Wildwood 66 is the base.
Right.
Yeah, that's,
Okay. I'm running and getting confused on what motions we've made and what we're talking
Yeah.
about. Did we have a definite motion on this?
Yes.
Okay,
I think we did.
thank
yeah.
you. All those in favor say yes.
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 Anyone opposed? We have the concept. Thank you.
All right, we may have just discussed this, but next up we have the purple area programming. And this might just warrant some additional discussion in case there is a specific design direction we want to give, or we might just leave it up in the air for future consideration.
Any comments on this section?
Well, I don't think a splash pad would be the thing. I think if it could be, if we want some sort of playground or children's area there, it could be, but it should be a very passive.
Yes.
If anything, a sandbox with Route 66 going through it or something like that, where the kids could play with their trucks and cars, but
Well, I think you also have to think about the year-round seasons and what would be applicable during the year-round seasons here.
Jim?
Is the purple area, is that a wall that's the arch, or is that a walkway?
I think that was a wall that they were anticipating, that serpentine wall. But again, it's
Well,
It could
I
be
was just
anything.
wondering if that purple area I mean, the fact that they colored it purple, I wonder if we could put that rubberized impervious, like playground material in there. That'd cushion the falls off the wall and it just be kind of easy on the legs and the feet too.
Well, Mr. Rubus, if we make the sign a climbing structure, we will have a soft surface.
Okay.
Robin?
I'm just sharing a comment from our Assistant Director of Planning. When she saw this, actually, when she saw the 3D rendering that was included with the official student design competition guidelines, she immediately saw a 6 with this wall and wondered if there was another way we could incorporate another 6 so that from up above you would have an aerial 66. Just throwing it out there.
Any other comments on this?
Madam Chair,
Yes.
I thought we had asked SWT Design to give us some perspective on the sizes of what I would call the yellow and purple areas. Did we receive those just in terms of square footage?
I have a dimensional drawing, I believe, for the photo op area, but I don't know about the purple space area.
they're not big.
No.
They're
That's-
pretty tiny.
That's my concern, is that if we talk about playground, there's all these requirements relating to fall zones, the swing set, those things like that.
We don't have room for that.
No,
That's what I'm saying. It's just, okay, so that's 1,800 square feet roughly. It was square or rectangle, but let's just call it that. We'll get some dimensions on the purple area. I think that'll
Okay,
help the
thank you.
discussion as well.
Yeah. That's smaller.
Yeah, I concur, Mr. Scott. I think it is.
I would like to just throw it back out there that I still think a small splash pad of some sort there makes sense, because we just don't have that. We don't, and I don't see this being a playground park. People are not bringing kids here to go play on the swings and go down the slides. granted, we want some photo op things, right? And I love the idea of the sign, and if we're the student design portion of that, I still feel like I mean, it's a couple fountains or something that gives you, it's a small area. There's not a whole lot there, but it gives you something for use.
Maybe a fountain with very shallow pool. And you don't chase the kids out of it. I mean, just.
There's, I mean, I just remember we were in the Bay Area when my daughter was young, and the locations where, let's say, like, I mean, I could almost see something if we had a bunch of restaurants down here, and it's just a place that on a hot day, the kids and the family, small kids and the family, mother, father can go, and they can just play for a little while without going to the pool and going through all that.
Yeah.
So I still like that idea. I realize the residents maybe in that area are not necessarily of that demographic. Their kids probably are, their grandchildren, but I don't know. I still like that. Again, we're also still very early in this process, so we're just providing feedback at this point.
Yes.
I will suggest that at the next planning and parks meeting. Joe, if you have no objection, it seems to make sense to me to talk about a splash pad somewhere in Wildwood. We try to get one of everything. So maybe this is not the right spot for it, but we can look into it.
Yeah.
And I think that's the appropriate place for doing so.
Robin?
I just also want to throw out there that part of what I was trying to do when I sent out that email asking for further discussion about the splash pad was to present that we don't necessarily have to go for an aesthetically kids-oriented play splash pad. We could potentially find something that looks really upscale and tasteful, that, that complements everything else we're doing in the park. And then just right here, while we were talking about the fountain concept, I was wondering, would it, what if we had like kind of a waterfall going over that seating wall just in that space, like just a very shallow waterfall type water feature? I don't know if you understand what I'm saying, but I think that might be attractive there.
Some water there, yes, could be in some way like that, and keep it a couple inches deep, and you don't keep the kids out of it. Let them play in it. As they would, should they be driving along 66 and come across a creek.
Madam Chair, you have a hand.
Oh, I'm sorry, Jim.
Was there a drinking fountain designed in this park?
There will be drinking fountains as
Okay.
part, or at least one, if not two.
I had kind of envisioned those possibly around the comfort station.
Well, we don't have to provide a direction today. So unless there is a strong position of this commission, we can move on to the next item.
If you could say, this discussion could be passed on to SWT.
Right.
Let them,
And also, well, I suppose we could move that we take it to planning and parks would be.
Well, I was just suggesting that seems to be a demand, or there's some appeal to a splash pad. We probably should have one and look into it. I do think that a splash pad is cheaper generally than even a very shallow fountain, and probably a lot less maintenance and headaches in the winter and those kinds of things. And so a splash pad would probably be more appropriate here if we want to save a few bucks. So Joe, is that a reasonable thing to talk about in PNP?
Very much so, Councilmember
Okay.
Rambo, because we'll be doing the budget discussion over the next couple of meetings of the committee. So it's opportune time.
So our next item is the timeline walk. And it's open for discussion.
well, I think the idea of having our map superimposed in concrete. That's what I'm suggesting, and having every historical or every building that's on our register noted and shown along there, But then with identifications on the significant ones with a button or pedestal or something you press, and you get a little history of that structure, or a pedestal with the sign and a written history of that. But I would think the kids could walk along it and like to step on the buttons and hear the story of what's going on, and their parents could follow them along and learn something. I think it would be an interesting walk that would appeal to children.
Any other comments? Chris?
I like the idea. I feel like our road is a little bit spaghetti because of the offshoots. But I mean, if we all agree, I think it makes sense for us to ask SWT to factor that in. I don't know if they get the same, it's hard to see with like the overlay right here, if they get the same amount of usage space for the couple of areas. Really, the two areas we're talking about are the photo op and then the wallish area or the purple area as well.
Yeah.
So
Well,
I like the idea and maybe it makes sense to trim off some of the excess, the little loop. I don't know that historically if that loop is more accurate or not.
well, what I did is I trimmed the map thing out and just overlaid it and didn't erase anything underneath it. So it shows over everything else, but I would think the wall and everything else could be arranged around it. I do think those little loops that come off of it are important because that's the old 66. So, I mean, I think it could be laid out in there. And again, that serpentine wall, I think could also work well with that. You could be on one side of the wall and then the other side of the wall. But, and I must say, the picture I sent Robin is clearer than this picture we're looking at here now. I'll send it to you.
And
Yes,
I
Rob.
like the narration button idea, but I just think down the road, that's probably going to be something that could easily be broken by people pounding on it or repeatedly beating on it. So
Yeah.
maybe to have just a small little plaque at each little
Yeah.
timeline, because every time you start getting things electrically imposed and pushing buttons. I don't know if you remember the old Smokey the Bear down at Rockwood's Reservation, but that was that
kids
became a
loved
real
it.
problem after a while. He started talking in slow motion and everything.
I
And
did
when-
a
and when
very
it
good
does-
impression of Smokey the Bear for our kids all the way home. But
But-
the kids loved it. So that's
It's
what I
very
would.
frustrating to them when they come up on it, thinking they're going to be able to push the button and something's going to happen and they push it and nothing happens. So, yes, Robin.
I had a crazy brainstorm when I was kind of thinking exactly about this. And what it was kind of like an oral history scavenger hunt through Wildwood that's prompted by coming to this park, but using more the technology of today, like having unlocking playlists that you can access via your phone when you're in front of certain Wildwood landmarks. So that you start at this park, you have all this information, you're getting excited about Wildwood's Route 66, but then you're challenged to go on the, Wildwood history scavenger hunt. Yeah, or QR codes, whatever. Exactly. So that you're actually being encouraged to interact with the corridor itself, not just the park. Because I think part of the park is to get people to really explore that corridor. But also what I wanted to say while I have the microphone is Nolan Myers, as our liaison from the Student Route 66 Task Force, do feel free to be a part of this discussion if you like.
Yeah. So just a couple of things I want to be talking about to update everybody on what we're doing, the Route 66 Student Task Force. Is number one, in the Celebrate Wildwood thing we had 4 members participate in that. So we were there participating with that.
Mr. Myers,
Yeah.
Your presentation will come at the next item. I was just saying you
Oh,
can be a part
sorry.
of the park discussion if you want.
Whoopsies. Yeah, no, I don't have anything other to say than that. Whoops.
But there,
Well, how about from a kid's point of view, what kind of things do you think kids your age would be interested in having at that park?
I think just some nice things to have is like maybe like even like a little like open field, whether it's just like maybe like 30 feet of just like small little land like next to the parking lot or something where you could like throw a football around or play catch with. And or yeah, and something like I don't know, you can climb on and I don't know, interact with, I think would be kind of cool to see for kids who are wanting to like that might get them to be like, oh, this is kind of cool. Maybe I should learn more about Route 66. Oh, this is kind of cool. I'm now interested in this. And just all because of this fun little park we had. With just like little things that you can do, you can take pictures of with your friends with and all of that. Yeah. Other than that, I don't have anything else to say.
Thank you.
Thank you.
is it possible, could you use your iPhone and scan a little barcode at each? Is
Mhm.
that what you were
Yeah, that's
saying?
what you said, yeah.
Yeah,
Your
just-
iPhone would then tell you, sort of like our selfie tour would tell you about that.
Yes, what I'm envisioning is you would unlock a playlist specific to that landmark. And then you could have stories from people, like, let's just take Old Pond School. You could have a story from someone who was in class at Old Pond School. You could have a story from someone who was part of the restoration effort at Old Pond School. You could have, you could have an observation from the neighbor next door to Old Pond School. But come at it from many different perspectives, just short segments. And I guess the reason I was thinking of that is because I just remember what a powerful experience it was when I went to the National Holocaust Museum. And that was one of the things that they did is as you went through the museum in their own voices, you were hearing stories from like Holocaust survivors. And it was such a powerful thing to just hear those voices. It was like bringing everything that I was looking at to life. And I was thinking, how cool would it be if not only did we embark on an oral history project, and I'm looking at grants, by the way, not only if we embarked on an oral history project, but like incorporated that into the landscape in this really unique way that honestly, I haven't seen anyone else do in my travels. It's just a thought, but it was just, as I said, it was a crazy brainstorm I had.
If you want to have somebody from Old Pond School, you better hurry up. Because I just realized I didn't graduate from there, but I would have been one of the last classes. So you don't have much time left. Get busy.
Believe me, that thought has crossed my mind.
Madam Chair,
Yes,
with your indulgence, could we talk about the master plan, the concept plan? These are details I think that'll come in that second phase that Mr. Hammond keeps describing.
Yes.
We're about an hour into the meeting and we're still on the first agenda item.
Right.
Yeah.
So therefore we need to move on to number 2, Route 66 school engagement updates.
Okay, I will start the presentation on this item, but then I will turn this over to my counterpart over here. First, I just wanted to do a quick update on the subject of youth liaisons. At this time, we are tabling this discussion on the agenda. We're still pursuing it. It is an objective for the department to develop a permanent youth liaison proposal for this commission to consider. In the interim, Nolan Myers has been elected the liaison for the Student Route 66 Task Force to this commission. So we feel that he is in an official capacity here and can advise this commission accordingly in the interim while we have those discussions. So without further ado, I'm going to pass it over to Nolan Myers to give you our Student Route 66 Task Force updates.
Okay, so now it's my turn to talk on this. Now I get to do this.
Okay.
So if I already said this before, so again, we had 4 task force members participate in the Celebrate Wildwood thing, which was exciting to get to see them go. Oops. It was exciting to get them to be able to be here, and unfortunately I didn't get to go, but it was nice seeing that our student task force was interested in doing this. And our next upcoming meetings for the 6 task force will be from 2 to 3 p.m. on Monday, October 3rd. You're all welcome to come and see it if you would like to. Sorry, I'm just reading over this. The next thing to say. Oh, and for the student design competition, we started this on September 9th. The deadlines for this are October 7th. The winner, we'll have a voting type phase where we'll go through them all and see which ones we think are the best. We'll have a winner announced around October 1st. And we had a recorded live stream a couple weeks ago, which had so our live stream it's recorded and currently have 56 viewers on the recorded version. But for the actual live stream and the selfie tour we had, which had 3D modeling, we talked about like the reveal of this, and we talked about how students can do this, whether it's art classrooms or 3D modeling classrooms, and that had estimated amount of 150 viewers. And with the 3D modeling, LaSalle Springs Middle School is currently working on and sketching out like their dimensions for a photo op space for that for the design photo op. And I think that's all I have to say. Just a quick update on what we're doing at the Route 66 Student Task Force.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks, Nolan. To finish off our presentation for this item, I would just like to note, and I think many of you have seen via the emails I have sent out, but I've been working with the Rockwood School District to develop, to go out and film the corridor, taking 360-degree photos of various Wildwood landmarks. That has finished, and as you may have seen, we have developed it into a virtual tour of Wildwood's Route 66. So it's a one-stop shop now available on the city website, where you can go in and tour the inside of various Route 66 landmarks, learn about their history, and also watch the selfie tour, which, as Nolan mentioned, has received around 150 views to date, but we think it's a lot more because apparently the Rockwood data tracking system has been having issues. And I think the last number he took was last Wednesday. So that was, I think, before even we released the virtual tour and handed it out to everybody at Celebrate Wildwood. So I'll have more data as time goes on, but word is getting out that Wildwood has Route 66 history, and it's been a very engaging effort working with Rockwood School District on that.
Thank you.
Finally, to finish things off, per the student design competition, I did want to discuss a little bit about judging the competition. So once we have ascertained just how many submissions we have, our thought is that first we're going to open up judging to the entire Route 66 project team. So everybody who has been attending all the meetings from day one, including our Route 66 Association members, our task force members, this commission. We're going to spend the week of October 11th through the 14th looking at the submissions at Old Pond School. So you can come and go at your leisure. You'll have a scoring card based on the scoring criteria, and you'll get to score each submission if you would like to be a part of that phase. Then the next week, October 17th and 19th, we will be assembling a final judging panel with the top submissions. And we'll have representatives from this commission, the task force, the Route 66 Association of Missouri, our Rockwood non-student members, and our city department, our city team, to judge those final submissions and choose the winner. So tonight from this commission, we are asking that you nominate or select 2 commission members to participate on that panel. Or at least give me an idea of who might be interested, so that I can reserve a place for you and get you that information when the time comes. Thank you.
Thank you very much. First of all, I hope that the commission doesn't volunteer like the task force did and everyone wanted to be a part of it. That just can't quite work that way. But is there anyone who has a deep desire to be considered as our representative? 2 of them.
I would be willing, I would like it, but how deep, I don't know.
Okay. Is there
I'm not
anyone?
available on those dates, so I will.
Hey, that's
I
good
have
to
set
know. Thank
myself
you.
flexible.
I also am very interested. Chris, you?
Sorry, I would be interested if needed, but if someone else wants it, absolutely, I'll step aside.
Oh, but someone care to nominate people? Jim?
I nominate for the liaison to the judgment panel would be Chris Hammond and Steve Scott.
Okay. Is there a second to the nomination?
Second.
Could be some competition for that.
Okay,
Which everybody wants to be.
Yeah.
I refer to that because at the task force meeting, they asked for, we were voting on something and everyone wanted to do it and they couldn't all do it. So, but that's just the way life is. Okay, any other discussion on this? Then I call for a vote. Jim has nominated Chris and Steve. All those in favor? Yes,
Aye.
aye. Anyone opposed? Thank you. You have 2 judges. Okay. Anything else on the Route 66 topic that we're on here and the engagement?
Madam Chair, that is all I have. Thank you for
Okay.
choosing your judges.
All right. So the next item is the Wildwood History Book update.
All right. So to bring you up to speed, I'll just first summarize what we discussed the last time we discussed this topic. And what this commission voted to do was go in the direction of eliminating the final chapter of the book with the determination that it might be too current to document from a historical perspective. Instead, we moved forward with the idea that we would proceed with the incorporation chapter, so end at the incorporation, and then follow that up with a photo essay celebrating 25 years of Wildwood, and then following that with an epilogue. It has also been discussed that we are not going to completely abandon the material from that final chapter, but instead we're going to take pieces of it and incorporate it into the earlier chapters of the book as flash forward boxes. And our copy editor said that would be a good idea and she would review it, with the flow of the book as she was doing her work. We've also determined that a couple sections could be incorporated into the appendix. So primarily we're talking about information on the Essen Log Cabin, the police department, the fire department, and then information about the Wildwood Historical Society when we talk about pulling pieces out of the previous chapter. So tonight, what you have before you for review is first a layout, and I'll bring that up on my share screen. There it is. Okay, so I'm bringing it to a single page view, just so you can see how it aesthetically lays out on the page. Yes, that is gibberish you see next to these photos. That is because we have far more photos than we are actually going to use for this section currently selected and under review. However, the process of Ms. Von Gruben was we need to get it down to a layout first and then determine how many photos we need and then start eliminating accordingly. So for your review is this proposed layout from our designer, Stacy Minkoff from Minkoff Studios. And she did take some of the photos that we combed through our files for and use those as fill-ins. But basically, once you decide on this direction for a photo layout, then my next task will be to work with Jill to narrow it down to a certain number of photos and then develop those captions and move forward accordingly with this section. So tonight I am asking your direction on this layout. I've also provided to you a example flash forward, the Wildwood, I believe it was the Wildwood Police Department flash forward. So that's an example of how we're reincorporating that into other sections of the book. And I also provided that epilogue that Ms. Von Gruben has since submitted, updated to reflect this alternative ending. So at your leisure, we can first discuss the layout and then move forward to the other two topics. Thank you.
Yeah, I like the layout. If there's one particular subject that has a lot more information, will there be a subsequent page that will be just more information and not more pictures? Or will every page be like this with the box setting?
So with the photo essay, the main feature on each page would be the photos, and then we just have very short captions next to each. So you would be seeing basically what you're seeing here.
Any other comments?
I think it's a very good approach. And I think we better decide, or it's going to be Christmas next year before we start selling these. Yeah.
Anyone with questions about what Robin has shown us here?
Do you accept the motion?
I would.
I move that we accept this approach to the end of the history book
Is there,
and proceed to finalize and translate the Latin into English, the pseudo Latin into real English.
is there a second?
I'll second.
Jim? Any other discussions or questions? All those in favor say yes.
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 Anyone opposed? We move forward.
Thank you. Did that include, by the way, the flash forward and the epilogue? Are we
Yes.
good with
Yes.
all of those? Okay.
Okay, moving on to the Essen Log Cabin. Oh, the comments we got at the tent on Saturday. You mean it was stolen? How could they do that?
I had some very, very interesting
Yes,
discussions.
yes, it
People
was-
were very interested in it.
So Joe, are you doing this presentation?
Yes, Madam Chair, thank you. And with the assistance of Robin, I'm going to ask her to share screen for a moment. Madam Chair and members of the commission, as you are aware, we've been very thoughtful about our process in determining what might be the best location for the Essen Log Cabin when it is reassembled and finally placed. We've started with a number of locations over the course of time and ultimately settled on 3 for final consideration. Those 3, in no specific order, were Community Park, Glencoe City Park, and then finally the Village Green. The component of those 3, I think that is important to note is that Glencoe is one of our historic communities. And then obviously Grover is another. Community Park is not situated in any, but it is probably the most visited park, at least under full city ownership. At our last meeting, the Historic Preservation Commission decided to reduce that number from 3 to 2 and discussed Community Park and then Village Green. As that discussion went along a little further, ultimately a request was made to see if Village Green could actually accommodate it and what it might look like on that property. So at the direction of the Historic Preservation Commission, the department contacted Human Nature, the firm out of Cincinnati, Ohio, that did the master plan for Village Green. And we asked them to take what we had in terms of the master plan and see what might work best for the Essen Log Cabin. Very quickly, I would just note, we provided them the information that Pattern and Ives had done when they reassembled the log cabin, so to speak, out on the top deck of the parking garage. And so they had the dimensions plus all the additional information that was available. Location A is, for the most part, bordering the western boundary of City Hall and in close proximity to our community garden. For the most part, requires the least amount of improvements to accomplish. Location B is in the same general vicinity, but for the most part is a little bit more orientated toward the western side of the oval and our Village Green than this. I don't know if you can get the location B. So there's that. Tonight, the department is seeking your opinion. Is it location A or location B? Both locations work from a topographic standpoint. It's one of the more level areas of the lot. Both locations have existing mature trees in the vicinity. And the idea is to create a backdrop of those mature trees. Both will accommodate accessibility for ADA purposes as well. And so from that perspective, the locations are very similar. But certainly, I think one offers, a better perspective and almost an immediate view of the cabin versus the other. And that's location A. I think I can speak for Robin and I. We were kind of leaning toward location A when we reviewed the 2 components. But again, tonight it is your opportunity to provide the direction. With a direction on location, we will ask the engineering firm to incorporate the design, if this is the location of choice, into the design and engineered plans and bid specifications. So we make sure it's a component of phase 1 of Village Green. Thank you.
Jim.
In location A, the purple dotted line. What is that?
The arc going halfway across the street.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah. It's blue on our materials.
There's no legend.
All right, Robin, can you move your cursor along the line? No, that's the path. That's the walkway. I think he's referring to the one that actually goes.
Like that.
Yeah.
That's at the future path alignment when a full build is completed.
Oh,
And so
I did.
it's as identified on the map. It's the future path alignment under a full build scenario. remember what you're seeing and have seen for the most part on Village Green is phase one. There are multiple phases associated with Village Green. So there's other improvements in this general vicinity. Not any structures per se or buildings, but again, additional pathways, landscaping, and other improvements. So that's the overall plan being laid down onto the site plan.
It looks like from this drawing that we are taking less ground from Village Green and utilizing ground that we already had next to the community garden. Is that true?
I think that's a good summation, and a couple of points to that summation. Yes, it seems to have the least intrusiveness on the overall master plan that was reviewed by over 1,000 of our residents at one point through our interactive process. It also, I think, takes advantage of the improvements in the near vicinity better than the other. And this could happen, I think, even if Village Green were not to begin construction in 2023, as we hope, the restoration of the cabin and its reassembly, I think, could happen regardless.
Any other questions, Rob?
Did Human Nature have a preference?
I did not ask them, and they did not offer.
Okay, so how much real estate is how much park real estate is to the south of these two? The drawing's not clear on that.
Actually, I would say there's probably a depth of at least 100 to 150 feet, and probably if you extended that out across the full width of the lot, it's probably an acre of ground that's behind us.
Will we be orphaning any of that? I mean, will it be less accessible because of the structure, the cabin?
No, this is also an area to the south toward near acres, that subdivision and their private road. This is an area where we were trying to preserve as much of the tree line as possible. There are a few trees that have been identified by DV Resource Group that need to be removed. They're diseased or are dying, but the majority here can be retained. And so, no, it will not orphan it.
Okay. I walked that area a couple years ago, and there aren't a lot of great trees to the south, but I couldn't get my bearings on this. We would have to put a path in maybe to the Village Green for Plan A, but as my only remaining question is on location A. Are there any mature trees between the cabin and the garden? Because the garden looks a little bit less natural than we might want for our cabin.
There is a line of trees. I wouldn't call them excellent specimens of mature.
Along the power line?
Yep.
Okay, and so there would be some visual. Okay, great. I like A myself.
Anyone else?
Again, Madam Chair and members of the commission, the request from the department assumes that Village Green is the final location for Essen Log Cabin. And then one last note, if there is a selected location, CDI, the engineering firm preparing the bid specifications and drawings, will then go stake it.
Steve?
Okay, yeah, I mean, my first choice was originally the city park. I thought it was more historically accurate, but I do think, practically speaking, the Village Green is the place for it. And I do think the location, I walked up in that location, I think it would be a very nice location for it. As to which of these approaches, I'd have to really look at it a little more. There's things that I like about either one, so I can't say I would reject one over the other. I do think in terms of timeline, there's funds to build this park or this Essen Log Cabin next year.
Yes, sir.
What's the timeline for Village Green?
If our grant application to the Municipal Park Grant Commission is successful and the budget moves forward as is going to be presented, it would be 2023. The grant application is for $575,000 and the department's requesting of City Council approximately $1.1 million out of the capital improvement program. We already have $700,000 set aside for Village Green this year for construction. That was ambitious. Obviously, we're not going to do it. So the number isn't as bad as it may sound. We're just asking for another, it's a lot of money, $400,000.
So this cabin would actually precede the building of this cabin could precede the Village Green construction.
I believe so, and that's why I think location A might be
That's okay. You sold me. That's my vote. Yes, I think it's the most practical location. I think it's a very suitable location. And I think it's most practical in terms of serving it, protecting it, and using it. So, and there could be another pathway down there to this big circular walk at some time, but that location up there on the hillside against some trees near the community garden. What I'd like to see, and maybe they would do it, would be outside of this Essen Log Cabin would be a kitchen garden where they grow their vegetables in, which would have been a typical thing. So I think this is a good location for it. I would vote for A.
Thank you, sir.
Any other comments? Jim? I was just getting ready to say I was. Chris?
I'll second.
Has been moved and seconded to choose location A. Is there any other discussion? Yes. You read ahead. That's not fair.
I think that was the initial thought. Correct me if I'm wrong. I think that was just the initial prior to taking it to forget the design, the master plan firm's name, Human something or other. Prior to take it to them was just kind of a mock-up is my assumption.
Yeah.
If I may, Madam Chair, just very briefly, if Commissioner Hensick is referencing the Terra Spec drawing CP-6. Generally speaking, that's about the location. As you can see, it's just near the existing community garden and generally takes the same advantage of the existing parking in City Hall. There are some refinements to it and I think improvements, but we were trying to shoot for the general location.
Any other questions or comments?
They're not a bit, but 3 of us would like.
Make that 4 and 5 probably.
Okay, all those in favor of location A, please say yes.
Yes.
Oh, that was loud. Is anyone opposed?
It's only taken 6.
Thank you very much. It will be location A.
Congratulations.
Okay, the next item is the work program.
Okay, so most items on this work program have been discussed this evening, so I'm not going to belabor it. And I will touch on the points of interest map with the next item. But however, I did want to update you as far as grant applications for Route 66 projects. A couple meetings ago, maybe the last one, when we started looking at the cost opinions for the Route 66 roadside park project, I was directed at that time to see if there was any way we could get historic preservation funding for that from the state. Due to their regulations or for that funding source, it does not qualify because it is not a historic structure and it's not on the National Register. So we can't pursue that pool of funding for the park project. However, what I did find was a public humanities grant. And this is not a cost share grant. It's just straight funds that are awarded to communities that win. It's a very competitive grant. But it does offer up to $75,000 for a planning grant. So if we were to pursue like an interpretive plan for the Route 66 roadside park project, which would explore that timeline concept, and then also apply it to our corridor as a whole for like considering that park a stopping point and then interpreting the corridor. We would get $75,000 up to for a planning grant, and then they have implementation grants that award up to $400,000 plus an additional $100,000 to fund a humanities position. So we are currently pursuing that funding source pretty actively, considering that it is a much bigger piece of fruit or whatever that expression is. And I am speaking to a program officer for that program this Wednesday. I've also explored just off the record with many of our partners that we've been working with, and it seems like we would have a lot of support for pooling together and having a collaborative project accordingly. We're still exploring the Historic Preservation Fund as a possible funding source. I listed on your work program this evening that we might be able to do a physical survey of our Route 66. However, it looks like the National Park Service just recently did a Route 66 survey through Missouri. So they identified Route 66 landmarks, at least through Wildwood. So I'm still gathering together that information, and we'll see if we can get it all together in time. But right now we're really shifting gears and looking at that humanities grant as a potential funding source for both our park and our corridor interpretation. So that's my big update there. Everything else, again, I think we are touching on as far as our agenda this evening. So if you have any questions at this time, Director Vunich and I are here to answer them. Thank you.
Anyone have any questions on these?
Grant writing is not easy, and we appreciate if you can win them. Good for you.
The goal is to make a very, very attractive proposal. We think we have many of the partners in place to do that. UMSL has expressed interest in potentially partnering if we had a grant to pursue. Rockwood School District continues to be very interested and involved. In fact, one of the things that really stood out to me when I was looking at this grant was that having a K through 12 element made you very competitive, as well as multi-institutional partnerships. Well, we have both, so why not? Let's see if we can do this.
Right. Okay, then I suppose we're ready to go on to celebrate Wildwood.
Okay, for this item, I have a picture presentation. So let me pull that up. Here we go. All right, so I believe Celebrate Wildwood was a smashing success. We had a beautiful day. I believe Dr. Rambo was talking about his Get Your Kicks on Ward 6 float prior to this meeting. There you go. Many of our city council members took our Route 66 theme very seriously, so I tried to pick out those photos for your review.
Good.
I especially enjoyed Ms. Clark and her Get Your Kicks on Route 66. And there was the other side. And we did get some classic cars participating. But a real highlight for this commission was our history tent. We did go 3 tents this year. So here you have the full display. We had a section on our new points of interest map. We had our student task force participants. Here you see Chair Stevens, Mr. Scott. Mr. Scott handled our Essen Log Cabin inquiries. We had all 11 historic marker replicas so that Ms. Stevens could really show that award that she was sitting next to. And our student members just did a marvelous job engaging people about the Route 66 initiative. They were so approachable. Everybody wanted to talk with them about it. So we really, we pulled in quite a few new emails for my Route 66 revitalization update list. So that was exciting. Wildwood Christian Church is interested in potentially playing up that transcontinental race history, because they were originally that hillside view location where runners stayed overnight participating in that race, in case you're not familiar with that bit of history. We also talked to Babbler State Park and their historian, so they got interested in our Route 66 activity. So lots of good contacts that day. Very exciting. And then there's a close-up of Lauren Dean because she came in our last shift of the day and did a marvelous job promoting the park project. Oh, and there's me and council member Nyan. And then finally, I just got a kick out of my dad's text to me after he and my stepmom came by the tent. And he noted that they chatted with a few residents of 30 years at lunch who were quite surprised to learn where they lived when they saw the new Wildwood Points of Interest map. So I got a kick out of that and thought I'd share. I do believe we gave away over 525 maps or so throughout the day. People were very excited to get them. Some long-term residents were like, map? Why would I need a map? I've lived in Wildwood forever. And I'd be like, no, you have to look. You have to look at the map. And once they saw it, they're like, oh yeah, I want one. Thank you. So yes, I think our map was a real success. It was really fun working that part of the booth because I got to see everybody standing before it being like, oh, that's where I live and that's where my grandfather lives, and just having all these really engaging discussions about where in Wildwood and what history was involved. So anyway, that is my update. Oh, and the points of interest map are absolutely selling out in our lobby at City Hall. I put them out right before the event. They're almost all gone. I'm gonna have to restock them tomorrow.
Wow.
So that's that. Anybody else have anything they'd like to talk about?
Jim?
I talked to a lot of people, and it seemed like on the early shift, there were people that were here for very short periods of time. They were residents, and they all, the common theme was they all came here because they wanted to be here because of what Wildwood provided. And, you know, the history was something, was another facet of Wildwood that they hadn't thought about, but they were very, and I guess the stolen log cabin was a great icebreaker.
And I had someone say, but you don't have your tip jar this year to put money in for the cabin, which we had had in previous years.
Yeah.
And I said, well, we'll hit you up another time.
Well, speaking of that, I can't tell you how many people wanted to buy one of our Route 66 t-shirts. We should think about that for next year.
Yes. Elizabeth?
I just want to let you know, I was not in your booth. I did volunteer to take student coming deputy. I was in another booth and I was in St. Louis Recreation Cycling. I cycled less than my husband. And it was a few members that but I can't tell you the number of people that came up, and I had about a 3-hour stint with the booth. And they had just moved last, and they were bike, where they were bikers, and also they do all kinds of work. They work. They good work for members.
Right.
And women singly and men, and of course there were children that wanted our candy. And I said, do you have I
Steve?
just wanted to share that with you because
Yeah.
it was amazing to me how many.
Well, if I may just piggyback, I will just note that quite a few people noted that they really appreciated that the bicycle infrastructure and trails was included as part of the history map. So that was definitely a talking point.
Steve?
Okay, yeah, I'm sorry, Nolan had to leave, but because I would ask him to take back to his task force how much we appreciated their involvement and
Yes.
their enthusiasm. And I thought they'd be sort of sitting in the back of the tent, waiting for somebody to come up to them, but they weren't. They were outgoing, and at least when I was there, they never got tired. They just kept going. So I really appreciate that, and I've been on them. I was on them to get more friends, get more people involved in it. But they're really doing a great job, and I want to just let them know how much they're appreciated.
Something that I talked about a lot. People thought we were the Historical Society. They didn't know there were two separate groups, both dealing with the history of Wildwood. And so I would head them down to the society's booth and said, you know, they have other things to present to you than what we do, but that we are working together as well. And so, you know, Robin and I had talked about maybe we need to have a nice banner for our tent, like the city tent had, to show that we are the preservation people. So, well, that's something that we could ask that you look into for next year.
Consider it done.
Oh, good. We like that.
And the Wildwood Historical Society can use more volunteers and members.
Yes.
I was telling people about how great their museum was. I went down and talked to them. They are really don't have anybody to take tours through there, and they'll only you call and they'll try to arrange for somebody to come over and give you a tour. So, and that's what I've been thinking. I've been a member dues only for quite some time and really not active, but paying my dues. But I've been just thinking about, well, maybe I should volunteer to go over there and have them call you, and you could take them for a tour through there. And I would recommend that to anybody else to join the Historical Society and volunteer to take tours, because that is a neat museum. I'm really impressed with what they've got there. So, plus, give them your money; they need it.
Anything else on this topic? Joe?
Again, just from the department's perspective, obviously a banner is an excellent suggestion. Was there anything else that you felt from an infrastructure standpoint would have made it better? Not necessarily the displays. I thought those were wonderful. Robin spent a great deal of time working on them. But I mean, location wise, was it okay next to the city tent, or should you have been down by the society? Or
We have been across from society
Yeah.
in years past. And I don't know that that was a real plus myself.
Well,
Maybe
I
if
guess
you
that's-
spread it out a little bit and get them going both places, it gets them through more of the area.
Just don't move us down by the bandstand.
No.
Keep us up where we are. If you're gonna move them, move them. I like where we are. I think we could have also a big sign that says free, because people walk by and they think we're trying to sell them something. So if they know this stuff, they know those maps are free, they'll take them. But, well, we're not giving away the t-shirt.
Again, thank Ms. Quaterneck for the t-shirts.
Maybe we'll have another opportunity where we could actually sell them, so.
Anything else on this topic? That completes old business action. New business. Nothing for action tonight unless you have something else to add in. The proposed zoning site development. The St. Albans Road property that we visited and gave permission to tear down some structures, but leave the house. You want to fill us in on your dealings with them?
Yes, ma'am, I'll be glad to. Madam Chair and members of the commission, as you know, the weather was much colder when we visited Mr. Connell's property and did our investigations of the outbuildings and principally the single-family dwelling. The commission was successful in delaying the demolition of the dwelling. Several of the outbuildings have been removed, those that were in poor shape. Per the direction of the commission, we have engaged St. Albans partners to basically try to convince them that that single-family dwelling on that lot has a great deal more potential than just removing it. Our first meeting was with Tim Kleppel, who was the gentleman that met us out at the site when we visited. The second meeting, which was held about a month or so ago, was with Mr. Kleppel, but also Ms. Mike Shadle, who actually used to be the city administrator in Clayton and in Frontenac for many years, as well as Richmond Heights. He is an advisor to Mr. Novelli, who actually owns the property. And he was very positive about it as well. We left the discussion kind of twofold. We asked them, being St. Albans partner, to basically tell us what they thought would be a workable solution to retain and restore the dwelling and make it profitable for them. We thought that was the best approach as a first step. Again, us telling them what we think may not make the numbers work, the return on investment. They also asked us to provide some suggestions, and we did talk about a bed and breakfast, art galleries, offices, potential retail, as well as increased density for residential. So we gave them a broad range of options to consider. As I mentioned in the memorandum that's been prepared for the commission, we've given them, I think, time to kind of hear what we said, think about what we said. And so we'll be reaching out to them and have an update for you at the October meeting. We've not heard back yet. I wouldn't take that as a negative. It's a big issue for them, obviously. And so we want them to have the time they need, but we'll give you an update in October, kind of give you hopefully something, a little bit more direction of what they're thinking. If there's any questions, Robin and I are available to address them.
Yes.
Yeah, Joe, is that zoned NU currently?
Yes, sir.
And did you, I mentioned to you at some juncture that Tom Kelp had told me that originally in our original plan, we had sort of denser zoning in that area as an adjunct or spillover or something, maybe for businesses from town center. I don't recall anything about that. Was that like an early on plan that got abandoned, or are we going to rethink that with these new proposals? Or
Councilmember Rambo, when Andres Dewani was in town and did the charrette for town center, there was a group, including St. Alban Partners, that talked about having not just one single town center, but maybe a couple of satellite centers as you went west toward Franklin County. One at T, and then they talked about the other potentially at Fox Creek and Old Manchester Road. So that was something that was presented. It was never incorporated into a plan, and the master plan certainly doesn't accommodate it right now.
Okay.
And so what we're using here, as you know, is the historic land use category. We've done one application that's been successful, Westland Acres. That too is zoned non-urban, intended for single-family dwellings at a 3-acre density. They have a 1-acre density now per that historic land use category. And so that's kind of the direction we're heading. It would be a pocket, but a very limited pocket based upon the historic preservation aspect.
So with no major change to our zoning, they're limited to 12.5 acres, so they can put 10 more houses or something like that there, but they can't really do anything creative, like, let's say, offices or anything like that. Really.
In the case of Westland Acres, no, it was a single family project that was the impetus of the discussion and the action. Here, though, I would say, at least from the perspective of the city administrator and the Department of Planning, we were looking at, if it does include a commercial component, that's an option.
Okay, but it would take a zoning change, but that's
Yes.
straightforward.
It would take a master plan change to this classification and then a zoning action.
Okay, good.
Anything else? Moving on to the upcoming training. It will be at our next meeting. Robin?
Well, Madam Chair and Commissioners, you have asked, specifically Mr. Scott, I believe, to have a training on the topic of archaeology, particularly from the archaeologist who went out to that property that is the future fire station to do the archaeological investigation out there. She does note that her findings out there were limited, so that won't be the sole focus of our training next month. But as I've listed here, she does have a training that she does very successfully to area groups on the introduction to cultural resource management. And she will approach that topic from the angle of this case study we have here in Wildwood and talk about her dig and process for that as well. So that will be next month. And she will be offering this training via Zoom from 5:30 to 6:30 p.m. It will be prior to our regular meeting. It's probably best that you watch it right from here because we will go straight into our regular meeting here in City Council chambers afterwards. So if you have any questions about this training, yes. Yes, that's the goal. We're already set up for that in here, so she'll just present right on your screens in front of you. Oh, yes, you can participate via Zoom. That is correct.
And I would suggest that we try to be here sometime before 5:30 so that we can begin right at 5:30 with her presentation. So if you can get here a little bit early, grab a snack on the way.
And according to our CLG coordinator, apparently getting these trainings authorized is like waving a magic wand over there. Like poof, you're approved. So we are approved. You will get credit as for your CLG training on this.
Very good. Thank you. Steve?
I spoke with her out there. I talked to her. She gave me a little lesson in what she does and how they do it and what the phases are. And I do think it's something sooner or later we're going to go through it again and we should know what we're doing. And I think she's very good and she's very friendly and I recommend it. I really looking forward to it. I think it'd be a very good thing to have.
It's good general knowledge to have for the area.
Our CLG coordinator, being an archaeologist himself, was very enthused and may be attending via Zoom as well.
Very good. Anyone else? Well, our next meeting will be, as Robin said, October the 27th, and she has something else to add.
I do. There's more training opportunities afoot.
Okay.
And talking to our CLG coordinator about this training we're having here in Wildwood, he was like, well, let me return the favor. And we are going to have a statewide training here in Jefferson City on November 3rd for CLGs, and it will be a number of different topics. They're going to try to tap different regional perspectives and put something together for the day. So the department would offer that up as well, and we would facilitate your attendance to this training if you should like to participate. I did hear from our CLG coordinator that they did take the responses from the survey that you took very seriously. I think there's quite a few new members of their team this year, so that's why they're doing the statewide training. But he did mention that next year they're looking to potentially do regionally located trainings as well. So I just wanted to announce that. It seems like more information is coming. So I don't have much more than mark your calendar for November 3rd, which is a Thursday. Thank you.
Thank you. And
Madam Chair.
yes. Oh, I didn't know where it came from. I'm
Sorry.
sorry.
As always, the city will cover the cost of the conference workshop. And certainly Robin and I talked, if there's a small group that would like to go together, we can arrange transportation. And then obviously we'll cover your food expenses as well.
Yeah, well, thank you very much. As has been the practice in previous years, because our meeting night falls on Thanksgiving, that of course we won't interrupt your family gatherings that day for a commission meeting. Oh, shucks, I'm sorry, you're gonna have to just get along with those relatives, Joe, I'm sorry. But we do postpone it until December. And that covers our November, December meetings because we do not meet during the holidays as well. So if you're wanting to mark your calendar for things that are upcoming, that will be on December the 6th. So that will be our November, December meeting.
And don't forget about that site visit at 4:30 on October 12th, which I believe is a Wednesday.
$4 you said?
4:30,
Okay,
and that's for that property out on Wild Horse Creek
Right.
Road.
someone else down here wanting to say something? I heard a voice. No? Well, it's been a very busy meeting and thank you very much. All your comments and concerns and questions were very valuable and we do appreciate everyone's enthusiastic support of what we are doing. So I would entertain a motion to adjourn. Steve has moved, we adjourn. Is there a second? No one wants to leave. Jim says, hey, let's get out of here. I take a vote on the motion to adjourn. All those in favor say yes. Anyone opposed? You don't want to spend the night? Okay. Thank you so much, everyone.